Wrong website, you moron. Oopsie. Okay, let's all right, let's get going here. So there's my pen. I already took it out. Okay, so really basic format for today, obviously. And I'm sorry I wasn't organized enough to do this on Monday and cancel class today. Sometimes I'm not organized enough, but and today is no exception. Okay, so Q&A, right? Any questions you have, happy to answer them at this point if you want to clear up any concepts. And after that, we will go into, I got a few practice questions to give you an idea what the questions on the final exam will look like. I have decided. The final exam will be 5 questions, not 6. And yes, that is all. That's all I've decided. And you will have 2 hours. So you're gonna have to be quick about it. I will try to get the grades posted as fast as I can. This class and its 625 answers per exam have just killed me this term. So I will try to get them posted as fast as I can and give you like a day, maybe 2, to come in and take a look. Is there a like happy last day of the semester? Yay! I will try. I will try to give you as much time as possible. Keeping in mind, I have 4 classes with final exams that aren't just straight up multiple choice. So, you know, it's a little ugly. And I have lots of marking to do. But I'll try to give you like, I guess I will, what I'll do, this is what I'll do. I will make it not hidden. So as soon as your exam grade is, like as soon as it's graded, you will see your grade, even if your classmates have not. I'm going to try to start at the back of the alphabet this time and work my way backwards so that the bottom, because it's always the A's that get the first treatment. And as a B, I've always found that to be perfectly just and equitable. But I will try to start at the the back of the alphabet. We're going for some alphabetic equity in this class for the final exam. And then I'll work my way towards the A's. What's my point? Yes, so you'll see them, and if you want to book an appointment, please don't wait. And please don't wait until after the grades are posted on Bear Tracks, because at that point, changing things gets to be a real hassle. And I'll try to give you a little bit of time. I will do my best, but no promises. Except for the promise I just made. Aside from that, no promises. Okay. Also, that is the only question. No one cares about anything else, and I am here for it. Everyone's like, please free us from our torment. Like, okay. I can free you from your torment. Do you want to? There's no other questions. I'm just double checking the exam date because I'm insane and keep forgetting because I have too many classes. Please, if you're around next year, remind me that this year was a bad idea. Just be like, just for the record, you doing 5 classes in a semester is dumb. If someone could just remind me of that. Yes, okay, so you got a week. In 1 week, April 16th, and it's, same thing, 24-hour period, midnight to midnight. You'll have 2 hours. It's 5 questions. That That's all. All right, no other questions? I know I've explained everything perfectly all semester, and so no one has any conceptual questions whatsoever. That's how good I am at my job. Okay. So, anyway, I will just say, right, we have basically four units. We have religion and spirituality, crime, we have health, and it's all about mental health, and then tech, which is really just about height. And his book used to have 3 units on it. Now it's just height. But I integrate the other stuff in. So those are our 4 units, right? So expect 1 question relating to each of these, right? So you'll definitely, like, I will have them sorted into, I will have like probably 5 different religion questions, 5 different crime questions. I don't know, 7,200 health questions. No, like I'll probably like 4 or 5 in each of these categories. And then I'm going to have a final category, which I will talk to you about, which will be sort of summative of the last 4 units that we talked about, or at least 3 of them. But I will show you what that kind of looks like. So it'll be sort of your job to put it all together. Why everywhere I go on this campus is there construction sound? I was in my office earlier and there was like grinding and backing up of trucks. Do they follow me? Is everyone against me? Can someone get me a tinfoil hat, please? Okay, so the crime one, right? The crime unit, obviously that's the one that we did online as a recording because I was sick. Pretty straightforward, right? And probably pretty information-based, given what was presented. So an example question would be something like this. What are the 3 major Canadian legislations that have governed youth crime, right? And there you got your JDA, your Young Offenders Act. I remember my own course. And then your Youth Criminal Justice Act, right? Okay, list them in chronological order, and obviously you can put the dates, right, if you want. That is the chronological order. So right there you get 4 marks, huzzah, something like this. And then one major aspect of each of them, this would be really easy, right? For the Juvenile Delinquents Act, it would be something like, basically indefinite sentences, right? Young person put under the control of the court until the court chooses to let them go, right? Young Offenders Act, gave full due process rights to young offenders, and the Youth Criminal Justice Act, something really straightforward, focused on, extrajudicial sentences, or, keeping youth out of the criminal justice system, however you want to put it, right? Something really, really straightforward like that. Obviously, doodling like this would not get you marked. Like, just that wouldn't be good enough. But hopefully, you're not just taking my scribbles as the answer. My words are the answer, right? So this would be really straightforward, right? And so basically, for each of these, an aspect of each would be 2 marks, 2 marks, 2 marks, right? So this one's a really straightforward kind of breakdown. It'll be something, it won't be this, but it'll be something kind of substantively similar because that unit was very just kind of like facty based. So something like that. For crime, it's going to be really straightforward. Okay. Because it was less conceptual and less theoretical. Does that make sense? Okay. So obviously here we're in mental health, right? And there is a lot of stuff here. Now again, because I am at war with the AI, I am fighting the Terminator before the Terminator gets here, so that when the Terminators come, they know who's boss and they don't mess with me. I word these questions pretty openly so that you have to kind of think about it, right? Okay, so 1 mental health trend identified by the course. And obviously there are a ton of them, right? So there's, increased self-harm, suicidality, loneliness, anxiety, depression, right? We talked about a bunch of things in the course. So I'm going to say, for my answer here, I'm going to say loneliness, right? because we talked about that, when we talked about Springtide Research Institute, right, their study on loneliness, right? Pretty high rates of loneliness amongst Gen Z, right? I don't remember the exact statistics because I am not a robot. But if I had my slides and I was looking at them, right, I would have the exact statistics that they identified, right? And you have lots of, young people identifying that they're lonely, right? They feel like they have very few meaningful interactions in a day, right? It was about 2/3 of them said that they had very few meaningful interactions in the day, less than 0 to 3 meaningful interactions a day, right? So let's say 0 to 3 interactions, right? So they feel lonely, or they often feel left out, or anything like that. And I will say, like, one thing that's kind of come up a bit in the reviews, especially of the second midterm, is, a lot of you could be a little bit more detailed with your answers, especially because it's open book, right? You can quote me statistics, right? You can be like, hey, identified by Springtide Research Institute in their 2019 study, right? They said, 55% of young people say they are, anxious often, right? Whatever it happens to be. Okay, so, and explain why it is or isn't problematic. So we're going to say it is. I would say it is, obviously, or I probably wouldn't have talked about it in the course. And why is it problematic? Because obviously, loneliness and feelings of disconnection increase other problems like, anxiety, depression, and such, right? So, okay, and so that's all for 5 marks, right? So here, you get 2 for this, 3 for this. And what do you think might be causing this trend? Okay, and here you're going to have to think a little bit about it probably, or maybe not. Maybe you have a clear idea of what this is. You can go a lot of ways here, right? So you can talk about, deinstitutionalization. You can talk about how, decline of religion, potentially, and third spaces, or other activities. More time on screens, more screen time. Less embodied time. So you can go a million different directions, right? We've talked about a lot of things through this back third of the course. A lot of it is connected, right? A lot of it was put together. You could say a decline in, I can spell, in the number of trucks tormenting Dr. Broussard. Number of trusted adults, right? You can do that comparison. I did a little bit quickly between our, trusted adults for the millennials in that religion study, the National Study of Youth and Religion, and then that subsequent Springtide Research Institute study, right? Lots of directions you can go with this. And why, right? Well, so what might be causing this trend, and why do you think that? Well, in the case of loneliness and, say, more screen time, you can talk about sort of opportunity cost and mentorship, right? That the more time young people spend on phones, the more they're pushed into things like weak ties, shallow online relationships. And the fact that they're spending more time there means they're not spending as much time building relationships with potential mentors, trusted adults out in the real world, which we know tends to reduce loneliness considerably. And again, I have that big, Springtide Research Institute chart that shows the difference between, 0 trusted adults, 1 trusted adult, and then like 5+ trusted adults. And you can absolutely, make reference to that and those different anxiety scores that were on there. So I know that's a lot. It's a pretty involved question, but that's kind of what I'm looking for as an answer to a question like this. Does that make sense? Am I frightening you? Okay, perfect. Do we have to answer completely based on the course content, or can you use your own opinions? Sorry, I was about to say something. I paused. If your opinions have some kind of factual basis, you can talk about other things. And certainly, like, on the second midterm, I had people be talking about, like, I learned this in SOC 270, whatever that course is. I think it's demography, whatever it is, right? I don't mind you bringing in stuff from other courses, as long as your own opinion isn't limited to, I think it's lizard people in the sewers. They're injecting us with their lizard venom. And I'm being a little bit glib, and I don't mean to dismiss your question. Opinion, back it up with something, right? Like, and tell me where you're finding this information, right? If it's just your opinion, that's going to be a fairly weak thing. If it's your opinion, maybe backed up by findings from another course, from something you read, from a study, absolutely, you can bring stuff in from outside the course. I think there's enough in the course that you can answer these questions just using the course content, and I'm not expecting you to go outside the course. But yeah, your opinion will have to be backed up by something, right? If it's just your opinion and you don't have anything to back it up, I don't think that's a great strategy, because I won't know where that is coming from or how you formed that opinion. So it's not meant to be a research paper either. So I would probably encourage you to stay within the course. But if you have something you think is really good, absolutely you can bring it in, again, as long as you have something to kind of connect it to. Does that make sense? Okay. Fun times. Okay. This one's a little bit more straightforward, I think, than the last one. Something like, you've got two concepts. Explain the concept of moralistic therapeutic deism, or the concepts of MTD and faith unbundled. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And here you'd be looking at 2.5, 2.5. You're going to split that one evenly. So again, you want to go back to the concepts, right? And there's a couple of ways that you can answer, say, like for MTD. MTD, you could take it, right? You could take the creed, right? So it's got those, and you look at the slides, right? It's got those 5 beliefs. I don't know why I made a bracket. 5 beliefs, right? And that's what MTD is. You could also break it down into, right, it is M, it is T, it is D, it is moralistic. Explain what moralistic means, or how it is moralistic. Therapeutic. How is it therapeutic? And how is it, deism or deistic? So what do each of these terms mean, right? So what's meant by the term moralistic therapeutic deism, right? It's moralistic because it has a very specific moral code of what it means to be a good person, right? You should be kind, not interpersonally obnoxious, work hard, all of that fun stuff. It's therapeutic because it's a system that's meant to make you feel better about yourself, right? The God in this system is there as a kind of cosmic butler and divine therapist, there to help you feel good about yourself. And it's deistic because the God is kind of distant and only shows up, when called upon. Okay, so you could, like I said, you could break down moralistic therapeutic deism in those 2 ways. Or, yeah, so the 5 beliefs, and kind of explain them, or break it down into those 3 aspects of MTD. Faith unbundled, right? A couple ways to explain this one as well. Either approach is going to be valid. You could go through, right? I've got that yellow chart, from the Springtide study that breaks it down into those 4 kind of categories. Curiosity, wholeness, relationships, right? I can't remember the other one off the top of my head, but there were those 4 categories I broke it into, and that's what it looks like. You can talk about it as being kind of, Spotify as a religious metaphor, rather than taking whole faith systems in and of themselves. You grab bits and pieces from different ones in a way that suits you, and then explain why these concepts are different. Again, I think this is pretty straightforward. And here you'd want to go back into the notes because I well, I guess it's not in the slides. It's something I said in class. I'll give you a really quick overview of this. So that's this from Josh Packard. I'm always amazed because I've asked this question a few times, and people will quote me directly, and I'm always impressed that people are paying this close of attention to what I say. I'm going to have them put me only in classes deep underground next year where I can't hear anything. So Packard, right, he says MTD is easy, right? It makes it seem like faith is really easy for teenagers, like they don't do a bunch of any work on it, right? They are very carefree about religious attitudes. It just comes easily. They don't think about it a lot. Whereas he thinks, looking at kind of young people, and Faith Unbundled, they're working really hard on developing religious identities. They're looking around. They're taking aspects from other religious traditions, looking at all sorts of things that are happening, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, experimenting with things. So this one's very hard, and it's very active. This one's very easy and very passive, right? So again, I said that in class, and that's how you would answer this question. So hopefully that makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay. Oh, by the way, this is completely not related to this course, but kind of. I was just reading today, and this came out in a publication from the Bible Society of England, which is really weird. But apparently, there is something of a minor religious revival going on amongst young people in England right now. Numbers of young people, especially in the 18 to kind of 30 category, are attending church a lot more. And for the first time since the Reformation, right? So since the 16th century, there are now more Catholics in England than there are Anglicans. And I don't know why that's interesting, but I'm going to talk about it in my sociology of religion class next year. I'm like, it's all being driven by young people going back to church for some reason. Not having to do anything with this question, but it's really cool. And so I was like texting all of my English friends who are also Catholic, who live in England. I'm like, what's going on? Why didn't you tell me about this? And they're like, it's like 3 a.m. here, go away. Anyway, they were not. I mean, they were impressed by it, but they're not as impressed as I was. I'm just like, I have charts. I need you to help me understand this chart. And then they're like, I'm going back to sleep. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Okay, so anyway, I'll talk about this in SOC of Religion next year. It'll be super fun. Okay, so here we're in height, like technology, right? So we are in the realm of tech and Jonathan Haidt. Right now I've got 2 more of his books sitting on my shelf, ready to read as soon as this semester is over. I'm very excited about my summer reading plan. Okay, so explain the concept of prestige bias, right? So obviously he had a couple of different types of bias. You're gonna get 3 points for this, right? So prestige bias, right? How does it work? We want to associate with the best models, right? So in primitive societies, you wanted to be, with the best warrior. You wanted to be with the best hunter, the most virtuous person, right? Whatever, man or woman was considered, highly virtuous, really holy, right? Whatever it was, people wanted to be associated with them because we have this evolutionary cultural kind of co-developed bias that we want to associate with the best models, right? So that's the prestige bias, right? We want to glom on to people who have prestige. Okay, how has this bias potentially been hacked by social media, right? Haidt talks about this. It's the algorithms. That's a G. Algorithm. I can't spell, whatever. I'm just going to leave it there. My brain is fried. It's the end of the semester, and I've been writing multiple choice questions since 8 o'clock this morning for an engineering class, and it's killing me. There should be an M in there. Algorithms. Yes, MS, I think. Okay, MS. Okay, so the algorithms, right? They push us towards certain people. Likes, subscriptions, interactions, the prominence of placement on like the front page of YouTube, TikTok, whatever, tells us who the people with the most prestige is, right? So we are pushed towards considering people with a lot of engagement to be the most prestigious and the people we want to emulate, right? So prestige equals engagement, and we want to kind of associate ourselves with prestigious influencers online, those that are being pushed by the algorithm, those that have, maybe mastered the algorithm. If you want to talk about, some influencers that are really good at mastering algorithms. So we want to kind of associate ourselves with them. Okay, how might this be harmful to young people? Okay, this one is pretty straightforward, right? If you are, attached to influencers, you're not attaching to real world mentors, right? It involves an opportunity cost. The more time you spend online engaging with Mr. Beast or whoever, the less time you have in the real world to attach yourself to mentors, right? And if you really want to drive this home, get those bonus points and that, go from that 8 out of 10 to the 10 out of 10, you could link it back to the Springtide stuff we were just talking about, Springtide Research Institute, or the National Study of Youth and Religion, and especially the role of adults, adult mentors, mentors, the way that having more of these people helps your mental health, right? Reduces anxiety, gives you a leg up in life, and how when you spend this much time, attaching yourself with prestige to these people, with prestige bias to these online influencers, you sometimes sacrifice real world relationships that would be incredibly beneficial. Okay. I keep asking people if they like that I draw and write on my slides, and everybody says yes. And I'm like, why? It's so messy. Okay. I will make sure, as I'm rewriting the exam, that I put the breakdowns in. Sometimes I forget because to me it doesn't matter, and I know what the breakdown is in my head. But clearly you don't have access to my brain. It's probably a good thing. But I will try to remember to put the breakdowns. I will make sure, because yes, I sometimes am bad. And I actually blame Jeff a year ago for that, because most of those questions were written the year before. So that's past Jeff's problem. He did a bad job a year ago, and now you have suffered for it. Okay. So this one, like I said, there's going to be some kind of summative question, and in my ongoing war against AI, you are the victims, and you're going to have to think this through a little bit. So, what I will say, the question that I ask, and probably there will only be one, because this kind of question is so open, that there might be two, maybe, but probably just one kind of question phrased like this. Okay, sorry, I'm being unclear. The last question of the exam will be something like this. There might be two variations on it that are slightly different, so that if you're sitting there with your friend trying to do the exam together, which sounds crazy to me, but you might not get the same question, and then I will have thwarted you once again in your efforts to defeat me. We are at war, and we always have been at war. We were at war with Oceania, and we have always been at war with Oceania. Sorry, a little George Orwell reference for no reason. In this case, I'm Orwell. I'm Big Brother. I'm Big Brother. Oh, damn. Okay, I'm just going to go ponder that for a bit after I tell you how this question works. Okay, so what I want you to do in a question like this, and again, it might not be worded exactly like this, you're going to look for a concept that links together several units from the last third of the course. Okay, so again, we talked, what did we have? We had religion and spirituality. We had crime. We have mental health. Mental health, right? And we have technology. Now, obviously, and I think hopefully you have noticed, I have been trying to connect these concepts together and this part of the course together as we have gone through. And trying to make these kind of links between the different things, right? And how they are all connected to each other in a circle, in a loop that never ends. Sorry, I started singing Pocahontas there. Colors of the Wind. The next Disney movie, I presume, to be made into a live-action remake and destroyed. No, they canceled Rapunzel. So after the horror that is Snow White, they were also going to make Tangled. And they're like, yeah, actually, we're not going to do that anymore. And I'm like, good. Tangled is awesome. Much better than Frozen, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. My daughter agrees. So, and apparently, the little lizard, his name is Pascal. That is the name of my son, my older one, and my daughter thinks he was named after the lizard in Tangled. She's like, was he named after the lizard in Tangled? We're like, no. She's like, he was named after the lizard in Tangled. I'm like, dang it. My other son is Remy, so he's like the rat from Ratatouille. So she's convinced that we named our boys after Disney animals, and this is not at all true. We just like the names. Okay, so with that bit of levity behind us, a student asked me if I named my son Remy because the rat works so hard and I wanted to imbue my son with those qualities. I'm like, no. It was literally the only name my wife and I could agree on after looking at thousands of possible names. We're like, do you like that one? It's like, yes, dear God, that one will do. Okay, it's a good thing he wasn't a girl because we had 0 girl names. It was like, yeah, no agreement whatsoever. Okay. So let's see. What could we link together? I don't even know. No, I do know. Let's say caring adults, right? Or trusted adults. Right? So here, you might not be able to link it into crime, but I don't need you to link every single unit. I said several, not all of them, right? I can think of ways that it links into crime. I just don't know if I talked about it. I definitely talked about it when it comes to Melissa Kearney, but that was a previous unit. Okay, so trusted adults, right? So we could say trusted adults. So if we were to talk about the religion unit, right? So more trusted adults equals what? Better life outcomes. Why? Right? Network closure. Because if you have more trusted adults, more likely that you are going to be supervised, cared for, and adults are communicating with each other and with your parents, right? Okay. On mental health, right? So, more adults, better mental health. And let's say tech. So, caring adults, right? What do we have? We have, mentorship. We have, guidance. Are they just breaking the university? Less reliance online, less screen reliance, better connections. Oh my God. Why do they have classrooms in this building? That's all just so irritating. Breathe. If you hear about a crime where someone driving a truck was grievously injured by a bald man, you will know that I snapped after this class, went mad, and assaulted the truck driver. Okay, so, right, quality of relationships, less of the, less phone-based childhood, right? More, I can't remember now what Haidt called it. Phone-based childhood, no, right? More likely to be, in the real world, right? Play-based, that's the one, right? Less phone-based, more play-based. Okay, that's a little janky. I just made it up as I went here. But look for kind of things that connect, 2 or 3 of the units. Like if I was thinking crime and my general knowledge about crime, right? The more adult connections you have, the more adult mentorship, the less your chances of committing crimes, right? Again, I don't know if I talked about it. I know I used to talk about it in 321 when I taught that class, but they took it away from me cruelly and gave it to, I guess, an expert in the field. I guess that works. I'm also an expert in the field. He's just a better expert in the field because his name is in the textbook and mine's not. Anyway, just try to find something that connects things, right? Caring adults, network closure, right? If you want to talk network closure, moral systems that are a little bit different, right? There's lots of different connections between these different points, right? Especially those 3 units. More time spent on screen, more isolated, less good mental health, more worser mental health, more badder. I don't know. My brain is fried now. Just kind of think as you're studying, and I promise you, there will be a question. It will be worded very similarly to this. And it's an exercise for me to see if you can put these things together, right? If you can see connections between aspects of the course, how do these topics fit together? Because it's all connected, right? And I've tried to connect it, and I've tried to bring it back to all sorts of ways that these topics kind of flow into each other. And hopefully I have done a good job with that. I think I have. Otherwise, you're going to struggle, and I'm going to be having to go back and remark questions and be like, everyone did bad on this question. But I think I've now warned you, and you're going to do great. But think about how at least 2, 3 of these units are connected, right? Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Would an open-ended question like this mean there could be a lot more opinion-based, like we think there's a link between units, and I might not agree with? Yes! Just make a case, explain why. Why do you think it's connected, right? How does this concept explain an aspect of the lives of young people today, right? That's a way for you to connect it, make that connection. Tell me how. Sometimes you think of things I don't think of, because as super wonderful as I am, I don't think of everything. Yes?
Should we make a connection with each topic that we're talking about? So for example, crime, make a connection, technology, make a connection, or just a connection?
Just a connection. I kind of broke it down in the 3 ways, but you can just kind of say, these 3 topics are connected by this idea, and here's why.
More about the second question.
How does this concept explain?
So one aspect for each topic, or?
No, one aspect overall, just for for whatever the concept that you think connects these different units, and what does it explain in kind of the lives of young people, right? So here it might be why young people with more adult connections are thriving better, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Other questions? I don't know. I'm going to go back to my Q&A slide. Would it be illegal if we use some ideas you used in the example questions? No. That is fine. That is all good. I am fine with that. It is not illegal yet. When I am emperor of the world, copying my wonderful ideas will be illegal. But as that day has not yet come. No, I'm kidding, of course. It would not be illegal. That's funny. Illegal is a funny word. No, go ahead, right? And again, I will say I didn't super well, I didn't form this out super well. I had an idea how I would answer this question in my head, and I just kind of threw it up on the board. So, it wasn't incredibly well crafted, but just be thinking about those connections between our topics. And I cannot believe that I took 42 minutes. I thought this was going to take 10 minutes, but I am wrong because I am good at talking. Or bad at talking? I talk a lot. Let's say I talk a lot. Okay, any other questions before I let you go in what is the last lecture of the winter term for me? And hopefully for you. I'm the best. You love me parasocially, like 12-year-olds love Mr. Beast. Well, given that a lot of you didn't come to class and just watched online, it is kind of like I'm an influencer. Weirdly, I get these emails from YouTube, and because I stream so much content online, I'm like in the top 1% of content creators for volume, like how much content I create and put on YouTube. And they're like, you create a lot of content, but your engagement kind of sucks. Can we help? And I'm like, no, I'm good. Do you think? Okay. I'm the LeBron of sociology. Okay. I mean, I guess he did set the all-time points record, so I'm gonna go with that. I like it. I'll take it. All right. Thank you for your kind words. Do you think future Jeff will also hate present Jeff like you hate past Jeff? Of course. I am currently making 100% terrible mistakes. And I know what future Jeff is going to think. Like, you wrote this incredibly open question that forced students to really think, and they wrote you like novel length responses, which you now have to read and grade somehow. Why do I have a beef with the creator of VeggieTales? So we had a fight. I had a fight with Phil Vischer, the creator of VeggieTales. Okay, so I'll tell you, he has a podcast called The Holy Post. It sucks. I hate it. But he made a comment on his podcast about contemporary Christian music. And I'm sort of like, on contemporary Christian music. But his comment was that he hated contemporary Christian music because he thought it was people monetizing religious faith, which I thought was a bit funny from a guy who made all of his money making a religious cartoon with vegetables that he then sold on video cassettes at Walmart. I thought it was a little odd. It was a kind of a weird critique. So I put it in the comments of their podcast. I was like, kind of a weird critique that you're saying no one can profit off faith except me because I made VeggieTales and it's on everything I do. Like every book I've written, every blog, every podcast, it's like Phil Vischer, the creator of VeggieTales. And then he commented back and we went back and forth. I was like, okay, like this is getting unseemly. It's like a 20 comment thread. Like, let's switch this to email. And then for 3 months in email, we went back and forth. And he's such a thin-skinned jerk. Like any criticism, like I was like, I think VeggieTales is moralistic therapeutic deism, like embodied, right? It's like God is friendly, nice, kind, haha, there when you need him. And I'm like, I think it taught kids like bad religious lessons, from a sociological perspective. If you want them to stay religious, VeggieTales ain't the way to go. And he was like, what did the vegetables do to hurt you? And I'm like, so he's kind of a glib prick. And he takes criticism really personally. Like everyone who ever criticizes him online gets a comment on their stupid podcast. Ours was kind of in private, so he didn't call me out, but on the podcast. But anyway, that's my beef with Phil Vischer. Is I think he's kind of a jerk. He's really thin-skinned, and he's not self-reflective in ways that matter. Like he cannot see that he is accusing other people of things he himself has done a lot. He's like, well, I didn't profit that much from VeggieTales. I'm like, what amount of profit qualifies as bad? Like, is it I built a home recording studio in my house? Is that because he does? He has a professional level studio in his house with like sound isolation, professional mics, and like isolated sound booths in his house. And I'm like, I don't have that because I don't have VeggieTales kind of money, Phil. He didn't take that well. He didn't like that comment. Anyway, that's my beef with the creator of VeggieTales. It was a really long discussion, and finally at one point I got busy marking, and I was like, okay, thanks, Phil, I'm done. Like he wouldn't let it go either. And I wouldn't let it go. Sometimes I'm like a pit bull on a pant leg. And there was something about him I couldn't let go. So anyway, that's my story. Jeffy B. All right, that's funny. One of my best friends in high school used to call me Jeffy. I think she might have had a crush on me, but that never went anywhere. I'm not saying you do. I just remember her. I just remember her being very funny with that particular phrasing. All right, so that is it. I'm done. I now took 47 minutes of your precious time. If you have any questions coming up to the exam, please do shoot me an email. I'm not doing any more scheduled office hours because I've had so many of them. But if you need to talk to me, I will definitely book a special office hours just for you. Oh.
you.